So Chapter 2, Lesson 4 is percents that are greater than 100% and percents that are less than 1%. So on the warm-up, it says shade the model to show 140%. Now, when we're talking about percents, when we have a whole thing, what percent is that? That's 100%, right? So here, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to separate 100% from the rest of it, okay? So we've got 100% plus 40%, okay? And that's going to be this entire thing that we're looking at right there, okay? Now, for 100%, we just said that's the whole thing. How much of this circle am I going to shade? The whole thing. We're going to shade, the whole thing. So we're going to color in the whole circle, right? So now with 40%, okay, we need to figure out how many pieces are we gonna color in. So we're going to start with the 40%. Now 40% we can write as a fraction, 40 over 100. Very good. So we're going to write 40 over 100. Now we can simplify this, right? What did I say I can do with those zeros? Cross them out. Crossing those zeros out, that's dividing by 10, right? Can I simplify some more? Yeah, we can divide by 2. Very good. So if I divide by 2 in the numerator and the denominator, now this is going to give us 2/5. So 40% is 2/5. 5 represents the whole circle, right? 2 represents the part that is shaded. So how many pieces are we going to shade? 2 pieces. So here we're looking at percents as decimals and fractions. Please make sure you write down your heading. Okay? Percents as decimals and fractions. It says here percents that are greater than 100% or less than 1% can also be written as decimals or as fractions. For example, we have example 1. It says write 0.2% as a decimal and as a fraction in simplest form. So the first thing we want to do is we want to write the percent as a decimal. And remember, when we're going from percent to decimal over here, percent to decimal, what am I doing? Moving the decimal 2 places to the left. Very good. So when I move the decimal, it doesn't matter where the decimal is, you're still going to move it twice. Okay? So we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left, and then we're going to take away the percent sign. So 0.2% written as a decimal is 0.002. You got that? Now we want to write it as a fraction. And when we write it as a fraction, 3 steps. First step is to read it correctly, right? Then we're going to write it, and then we will simplify it. Very good. So 0.002 read correctly is 2 thousandths. 2 thousandths, right? So we're going to write that 2 over 1,000, and then we can simplify it by dividing by 2. So example 2 says write 170% as a mixed number in simplest form and as a decimal. Okay? So here we're going to write 170% as a mixed number first. Now remember, percent means per 100, right? So 170% means 170 per 100. The way we write that as a fraction is 170 over 100. Is everybody clear with that? And now we can change that improper fraction to a mixed number. So how many times does 100 go into 170? Once. With how many left over? 70. And the denominator stays the same. So we end up with 1 and 70 hundredths. And of course, we can simplify by dividing by 10. And we end up with 1 and 7/10. 1 and 7/10. Now, 1 and 7/10, when we read that, correctly, we can write it as a decimal, 1.7. So for the got it problems, you're going to write these down in your notes. It says, write each percent as a decimal and as a mixed number or a fraction in simplest form. So the first thing we wanted to do is go from percent to decimal. So percent to decimal, which way do I move the decimal? 2 places to the left. Very good. So I'm going to rewrite this just so I have, so it's bigger so I can manipulate the decimal. 0.25%, we're going to take this decimal and we're going to move that 2 places to the left. And there's my new decimal. And what do I do with this little bloop right there? You add a 0. Very good. So, also we need to take away the percent sign. So once you change from percent to decimal, you do not write that percent again. So here, this is equal to 0.0025. Got that? All right. So now we want to write that as a fraction. So we have to read it correctly, we need to write it, and then we need to simplify it. 0.0025 read correctly. Can somebody read that for me? You don't say the 0. That's 25 10,000ths. Very good. This is 25 10,000ths. So now we're going to write that as a fraction. So we've got 25 10,000ths. And now we can simplify. So we're going to divide by, what do you think? I can do better than 5. What do you say? 25. Very good. Divide by 25. And then we end up with 1 over, how many times does 25 go into 100? 4. And then we have 2 more zeros to add, right? So that's 1/400. So for problem B, we have 300%. And we want to write that 300% as 300 per 100. So we're going to write, first let's write it as a decimal, okay? So we've got 300%, and the decimal, just like you said, is at the end, right? So when I want to go from percent to decimal, which way do I go? To the left, 2 places to the left, and then we put our decimal right there and take away our percent sign. So 300% as a decimal will be 3.00. But do I need to have that 0.00 in there? No. So I could just write 3. You got that? Now, if I want to write 300% as a fraction, okay, remember, percent is always over 100, right? So here, let me write it in blue. We've got 300 over 100. 300 over 100. And now, that's my fraction. I can simplify it, right? By dividing by 10, 100. So we can divide by 100, right? So when I divide by 100, I end up with 3 over 1, which is just 3. So you guys do letter C on your own, and I will freeze it, and then you can, and then we'll show you the answer. So here, we just move the decimal to the left 2 places, and we end up with 5.3. Now, if you would have 5.30, right? But don't forget, you don't need that trailing 0. So that 0 comes out, so it becomes 5.3. Does everybody understand that? Okay? And then when we read this decimal correctly, that's 5 3/10. And there's the 5 3/10. So, example 3 says, Jimmy's savings increased 250%. We want to write 250% as a mixed number in simplest form and as a decimal. So, once again, 250% means 250 per 100, right? So when we have 250 per 100, that's 250 over 100. And then you can change that improper fraction to a mixed number. So how many times does 100 go into 250? That's twice, with 50 left over. And then we can simplify to 2 1/2. So there's our mixed number. And 2 1/2 as a decimal is 2.5. Is everybody clear with that? So that says that Jimmy more than doubled his savings. So for got it, letter D, it says the stock price for a corporation increased by 0.11%. We want to write 0.11% as a decimal and as a fraction in simplest form. So we're going to start with the percent, 0.11%. So now, if we're going from percent to decimal, which way do I move the decimal again? To the left. How many places? Twice. 1, 2. And then don't forget, once you change it to a percent to a decimal, you take the percent sign away. And what do I do with this little bloop right here? We annex a 0. Very good. So this is going to be 0 as a decimal, 0.0011. Okay? So now we're going to take that decimal and we're going to read it, we're going to write it, we're going to simplify it if we can, right? So we're going to change it to a fraction. So, can somebody read that for me? What does that say?
11
Very good. That is 11 10,000ths. So this is equal to 11 over 10,000. Now, can I simplify that? Nope. And that's your final answer. So now we're going to change mixed numbers and decimals. We're going to change those to percents. Now, this first sentence, you don't have to write that down again because you've written that down several times already. It says to write a decimal as a percent, you want to multiply times 100 and add the percent sign. When we multiply times 100, that means we're moving the decimal which way? To the right 2 times, right? So we've already written that down several times in our past lessons. So this part I want you to write down. To write a mixed number as a percent, first we're going to write the mixed number as an improper fraction. So example 4 says write 1 1/4 as a percent. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write 1 1/4 as an improper fraction. So 1 1/4 becomes 5/4. And now we're going to write that we need to change 4 to 100. Okay? So in order to change 4 to 100, we're going to multiply times 25. Oops, very good. So if I multiply by 25 in the denominator, I need to do the same thing in the numerator. So when I multiply 5 times 25, I get 125. We end up, our fraction is 125 over 100, which now we're writing it as a percent, right? So it's 125 per 100, which is 125 per cent. So our percent is 125%. So for the got it, it says write each mixed number as a percent. So once again, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write the 2 9/10 as an improper fraction. So 10 times 2 is 20, plus 9 is 29. And the denominator stays the same. So now we want to change that to per 100, right? So what am I going to do with that denominator 10? Multiply times 10. Very good. Multiply times 10 there in the denominator and in the numerator. So when we do that, we end up with, very good, 290 over 100. That's 290 per 100. So, as a percent, this is 290%. Here, we have 3 2/5. We're going to change 3 2/5 to an improper fraction, 17/5. And then we're going to change this fraction to a denominator of 100. So we multiply times 20 in the numerator and denominator, and we get 340 over 100. Then, that is 340 per 100, which is 340%. So now, for example 5, we want to write the decimal as a percent. And when I'm writing decimal as a percent, which way do we move the decimal? To the, look at the arrow, decimal to percent, to the right 2 places. Okay? So here, we're going to write 1.68 as a percent. We're just moving the decimal 2 places to the right, and that becomes 168%. Simple as that. Down here, and again, it doesn't matter where the decimal is, you need to move it 2 places. Got it? So here we have 0.0075. We're going to write that as a percent. So that decimal gets moved 2 places to the right, and we end up with 0.75%. So for got it letter G, we have 2.5, and we want to change this decimal to a percent. To change decimal to a percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the right, and then we're going to have to annex that 0. So now 2.5 as a percent is 250, and don't forget, you must write your percent symbol. Okay? You must write your percent symbol. So, for example H, for problem H, we have 0.004. And on this one, once again, we're going to take that decimal and move it 2 places to the right. Very good. So, this 0.004, or 4 thousandths, is going to be 0.4%. So we move the decimal 2 places to the right, and we have 0.16%. Okay? Example 7 says the cheetah is the fastest land mammal in the world. The peregrine falcon is the fastest bird in the world. Its speed is 2.1 times as fast as the cheetah. We want to write this number as a percent. So once again, we're taking that decimal and moving it 2 places to the right. Very good. So we can move it 2 places to the right. So 2.1 becomes 210%. So the peregrine falcon's speed is 210% of the cheetah's speed. Okay? So here, the slowest land animal is the sloth. Right? Its speed is about 0.0016 of a cheetah. We want to write that number as a percent. So we're going to start with 0.0016. And now, changing that number, that decimal, to a percent, we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So that gives me 0.16%.